Welcome to the Coin Riches channel. Before we begin, take just 1 second to subscribe to this channel. Because what you are about to hear today may change the way you look at the coins and banknotes already sitting quietly in your home. Do you have old coins or banknotes stored somewhere? Maybe in a small box, an old drawer, or a forgotten wallet passed down through family. Most people do. And most people never imagine that one ordinary-looking coin could carry a story powerful enough to cross generations, and a value strong enough to shock the world. Today, we are talking about a coin that almost everyone ignored. A coin that passed through millions of hands without a second glance. A coin that looked so common, so normal, that people spent it without thinking twice. Yet history had other plans. The British Queen Elizabeth I-penny coin from 1992. At first glance, it doesn't shout importance. It doesn't shine like gold. It doesn't feel heavy with wealth. In fact, many people remember it as loose change. Something you might have dropped into a jar, left in your car, or forgotten in a pocket, but value does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits. The year 1992 was not just another year in Britain. It was a turning point. The country was facing economic pressure, social change, and uncertainty about the future. Coins minted during such periods often carry hidden significance, not because of what they are made of, but because of when and how they were created. Queen Elizabeth II had already reigned for decades by then. Her portrait on the coin symbolized stability in a world that was slowly shifting. To many, that image felt permanent, almost eternal. And because it felt permanent, people assumed the coin would always be there, always common, always replaceable. That assumption is where history begins to play its quiet trick. The 1992 one-penny was produced at a time when subtle changes were happening inside the Royal Mint. Small decisions, minor variations, and unnoticed adjustments took place. To the average person, these details meant nothing. To a collector with patience and understanding, they meant everything. Most people think rarity comes only from low production numbers. That's not always true. True rarity often comes from survival. How many coins were actually kept? How many were damaged, melted, lost, or spent beyond recovery? How many escaped circulation in original condition? Very few. The one penny is the most abused coin in daily life. It is dropped, scratched, ignored, and discarded. It travels more than any other coin. And because of that, finding one that has survived time in exceptional condition becomes incredibly difficult. For viewers between 35 and 65 years old, this story hits differently. You remember 1992. You remember the world before digital wallets, before online banking, before money became something you barely touched. Coins mattered. You felt them. You carried them. And you never imagined that something so ordinary could one day stand apart from the rest. The design of the coin reflects a Britain holding on to tradition. The Queen's portrait carries a calm authority, a sense of continuity. The reverse design speaks quietly of national identity, not in loud symbols, but in restraint. This was a coin made for use, not admiration, and that is precisely why it matters. Collectors today don't chase what was celebrated. They chase what was overlooked. As years passed, fewer and fewer high-quality examples of the 1992 one-penny remained. Circulation wore them down. Modernization pushed them aside. Inflation erased their purchasing power. And slowly, almost invisibly, they began to disappear. People threw them away. Children played with them. Families cleared out drawers without a second thought. Each time, the number of surviving pieces quietly declined. Meanwhile, a small group of collectors paid attention. They studied tiny differences. The sharpness of the Queen's portrait. The clarity of the lettering. The strength of the strike. The story behind the year. They understood that history is not always about ancient coins. Sometimes, history hides in plain sight. This coin represents a bridge between eras. Between physical money and digital value. Between a Britain rooted in tradition and a world racing toward change. That emotional weight matters more than most people realize. Coins are time capsules. They carry the fingerprints of a society, the choices of a government, and the habits of everyday people. The 1992 one penny holds all of that inside a small copper surface, and here is the uncomfortable truth: most valuable items were once considered worthless. The people who benefit later are not always the smartest. They are the most patient. Think about how many times you've heard stories of people throwing away old things, only to regret it decades later. Coins are no different. They wait silently while time does its work. Right now, many people still believe this coin is nothing special. They still underestimate it. And that belief is exactly what creates opportunity. This is not about luck. This is about awareness. As collectors age, and new generations lose interest in physical coins, truly preserved examples become even harder to find. Demand doesn't come from everyone. It comes from those who understand history, quality, and scarcity. If you were alive in 1992, this coin is part of your lifetime. It moved through your world without asking for attention. And now, years later, it asks a quiet question: did you keep me, or did you let me go? In the final part of this story, we will uncover what separates an ordinary penny from an extraordinary one, why collectors are willing to pay shocking amounts, and how a coin once dismissed as pocket change reached a value few people could ever imagine. If this kind of hidden history fascinates you, make sure you stay with me. As time moves forward, something interesting happens with objects that were once everywhere. They begin to vanish. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly. One by one. And that quiet disappearance is exactly what gives certain coins their power. The 1992 Queen Elizabeth one penny did not disappear because it was rare. It disappeared because it was ignored. People spent it without thinking. Shops returned it without care. Children scratched it on concrete. Many were bent, corroded, or simply thrown away when they no longer felt useful. When Britain's economy shifted and prices rose, the one penny lost its meaning in daily life. Its role faded, and when usefulness fades, preservation usually disappears with it. Collectors today understand this pattern very well. They don't just look at how many coins were minted. They ask a deeper question: how many survived the real world? A coin that lived in circulation for decades carries damage like a record of human behavior. Every scratch is a decision. Every dent is a moment of neglect. So when a collector finds a 1992 one penny that escaped most of this abuse, it immediately stands apart. But condition alone is not the full story. What makes this coin especially intriguing is the timing of its production. By the early 1990s, the Royal Mint was already considering changes to materials, efficiency, and long-term sustainability. Subtle transitions were happening. Small details that most people never notice began to matter deeply to those who studied coins closely. These details created differences that only trained eyes could spot. Slight variations in finish. Differences in strike sharpness. Minor inconsistencies that separated ordinary examples from exceptional ones. To the public, all pennies looked the same. To a serious collector, they did not. For viewers in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, this idea feels familiar. You've seen how craftsmanship has changed over the years. You know the difference between something mass-produced quickly and something made with care. Coins are no different. Even within the same year, quality can vary more than people expect. The Queen's portrait on this coin carries a particular maturity. It reflects a monarch firmly established in history, not at the beginning, not at the end, but at a point where legacy was already forming. That alone adds emotional weight. Collectors are not only buying metal. They are buying connection. They are buying a moment frozen in time, a reminder of stability during uncertainty, a symbol of continuity in a changing world. The 1992 one penny represents that balance perfectly. As years passed, international interest in British coinage increased. Collectors outside the UK began to look more closely at modern-era coins, especially those tied to Queen Elizabeth II. Her reign became one of the longest in history, and that fact alone elevated every object associated with it. Suddenly, coins that were once dismissed as too recent became historically relevant, and that shift changed everything. When collectors reassess an era, they don't start with the obvious. They search for overlooked pieces. Coins that slipped through the cracks. Coins that were never celebrated but were always present. The 1992 one penny fits that profile perfectly, another factor that drives interest is how difficult it is to verify truly untouched examples. Many coins look clean at first glance but reveal hidden wear under closer inspection. True preservation is rare. And rarity created by survival is often more powerful than rarity created by low numbers. This is why seasoned collectors are willing to wait years to find the right piece. They understand that the difference between an average coin and an exceptional one can be life-changing, but here's something most people don't realize: many valuable coins are discovered not in collections, but in ordinary homes. They are found in old jars, inherited boxes, forgotten drawers, or envelopes that haven't been opened in decades. People don't search for them because they don't believe there's anything worth finding. That belief is exactly what keeps opportunities hidden. Think about how many times you've moved houses. How many times you've cleaned out cupboards. How many things you've thrown away because they seemed useless at the time. Coins often disappear in those moments, yet every once in a while, someone pauses. Someone looks closer. Someone decides not to rush, and that pause changes everything. The people who benefit from these discoveries are not always collectors themselves. Sometimes they are simply careful, curious, patient. This is why stories like this resonate so deeply with older audiences. You understand the value of patience. You understand that time reveals truth. And you understand that not everything valuable announces itself immediately. The 1992 Queen Elizabeth I penny teaches a powerful lesson. Importance is often assigned long after usefulness ends. Right now, many of these coins still exist in the world. But the window is narrowing. Each year, fewer remain in the condition that truly matters. Each year, more are lost forever. Collectors know this. And they act quietly. They don't make noise. They don't rush the public. They wait for the moment when understanding catches up with history. That moment is closer than most people think. That I end the final part of this story, we will reveal why this coin crossed a line from ordinary to extraordinary, what exact factors pushed collectors to pay attention, and how a small copper coin reached a level that shocked even experienced experts. Stay with me. There comes a point in every collectible's journey when curiosity turns into recognition. For the 1992 Queen Elizabeth I penny, that moment did not arrive suddenly. It crept in slowly, through quiet auctions, private discussions, and careful evaluations by people who had spent their lives studying coins. What changed was not the coin itself. What changed was perspective. As collectors compared notes, a pattern emerged. Truly exceptional examples of this penny were almost impossible to source. Not because they never existed, but because everyday life had erased them. Circulation had done its job too well. Coins that once moved through millions of hands were now missing from the highest quality tiers. When grading experts examined surviving pieces, they found that most fell short. Tiny marks. Slight wear. Loss of original surface. All signs of a life fully lived as money. And then, occasionally, something extraordinary appeared. A coin that looked untouched by time. A strike so sharp it felt intentional. Surfaces that still carried their original character. A presence that separated it instantly from the rest. These moments changed conversations. Collectors began to understand that the 1992 one penny was not common in the way people assumed. It was common only in memory. In reality, its finest survivors were scarce. This is where serious money enters the story. High-end collectors are not driven by nostalgia alone. They are driven by competition. By the desire to own something others cannot easily acquire. When a coin fits that profile, demand intensifies rapidly. Another force added pressure. Legacy collecting. As Queen Elizabeth II's reign came to be viewed as a complete historical era rather than an ongoing one, objects tied to specific points within that era gained importance. Coins from transitional years became markers of time, not just currency. The year 1992 began to stand out. It represented maturity, endurance, and quiet continuity. Not the beginning of a reign, not the end, but a point where history was already being written. That subtlety appealed deeply to experienced collectors. They recognized that future generations would not see this coin the way people once did. They would see it as a surviving artifact from a finished chapter of history, and artifacts are valued differently. As more collectors reached the same conclusion, availability shrank. Pieces disappeared into long-term collections. Prices climbed quietly. Not explosively, but steadily. Each sale reset expectations. Still, the wider public remained unaware. This disconnect is what makes stories like this so powerful. While headlines focus on obvious treasures, true value often grows in silence. People between the ages of 35 and 65 understand this instinctively. You've watched trends come and go. You've seen how time rewards what lasts, not what shouts. Coins like this don't demand attention. They earn it, and here is the most striking part of all: many of the most important examples of this coin were not found by professional treasure hunters. They were found by ordinary people who decided to look twice. People who remembered that not everything old is useless. That sometimes, the smallest objects carry the longest stories. A single coin, sitting quietly for decades, suddenly becomes a bridge between past and future. Between memory and meaning. Between what was spent and what was saved. This is why collectors speak about coins with respect. They are witnesses. They survive when so much else is lost. The 1992 Queen Elizabeth I penny survived a world that stopped needing it. And in doing so, it gained a different kind of value. One that cannot be measured only by metal or size. As demand increased and supply tightened, the market reached a point of disbelief. Prices once considered unthinkable became real. Records were discussed, not as speculation, but as outcomes. Experts who had spent years dismissing modern pennies were forced to reconsider. Not because they wanted to, but because evidence demanded it. And that brings us to the moment everyone waits for. After decades of neglect, after years of quiet accumulation, after careful evaluation by serious collectors, the finest known examples of the 1992 British Queen Elizabeth I penny crossed a line that stunned the collecting world. A coin once ignored as pocket change reached a value of $400,000, not in theory. Not in rumor. In reality. $400,000 for a one-penny coin. This is not a story about luck. It is a story about time, awareness, and patience. About understanding that value is not always visible when it is born. Sometimes, it reveals itself only after the world has moved on. So the next time you come across old coins or banknotes, pause. Look closer. Because history has a habit of hiding in the places we least expect, and sometimes, it's already in your hands.